So, Jamell, thanks ever so much for joining us today. This is the start of Bold Impact, and what we're going to do to start off with, just for the people who may know you, may not know you, let's just have a bit of a background to yourself and your basketball CV as such.
Yeah, so Jamell Anderson. I'm 29. I have played basketball since I was 15. I started in secondary school for the school team. My background was athletics, a little bit of football. But yeah, I fell in love with basketball. I signed my first professional contract at 19. I played in Essex for a newly found team in 2019. Played there for 2 years. And then I was picked up by the Leicester Riders. So I've played for the Leicester Riders for 6 years while studying at Loughborough College, Loughborough University, for a sports degree. I finished my degree. I also won 6 national trophies with Leicester Riders. I've played Great Britain in the 20s. I've played with the men's Great Britain team more recently. I've played the England 3v3 in the first 3v3 international tournament, which was in Greece. I've played pretty much everywhere in Europe. I've played in Australia, where we won the playoff championship with a team that hadn't won it in 12 years or even been to the final in 12 years. Man, basketball-wise, I've done a lot.
You have. So obviously, I know you a little bit from a few years now. So just to recap, then, you've pretty much you've won every title possible at a professional level. So you've won a title abroad as well in Australia, and you're also playing kind of senior GB basketball. What we discussed before this was getting into the kind of taboo subjects of personal development and high performance, human performance, I suppose. So what I want to get into today is emotion. So I've been putting stuff out there around emotional intelligence and whether or not it's something that we should be getting ourselves involved in, and whether or not it has an impact on maintaining high performance. So the first question for you, Jamell, is what do you think about emotions? Is it a taboo subject, or in your world, from your perspective, is it something that is quite openly spoken about?
I think the way I perceive emotions may or may not be correct, but the way I perceive emotions are almost like reactions. My emotions leading up to a game, there isn't any. I don't know if that's because of my experience. So I'm like used to playing games. I'm used to those moments. But like for me, I don't classify anxiety or nerves as emotions. In my mind, emotions are my reactions to things. So, I go back to in Australia, I never cry.
Okay.
Like, it's just something I don't do. It's not like, I'm not like, oh, I'm a tough guy, I don't cry. But fortunately for me, nothing has made me cry in a very long time. And the first and only time that I've ever cried with joy was in Australia. We had maybe 15 seconds left on the clock. We knew we was going to win the game. It was over. And it was the first time where it was like, oh my gosh, we've done it. It was a 3-game series. We took it all the way down to the 3rd game. So it was do or die pretty much. And I'm shooting free throws and tears are coming out of my eyes as I'm shooting the free throws. And I'm like, I'm crying. Like, this is huge. And to me, in my mind, that's what I view as emotion. Because I don't feel as if like I can almost prepare myself for that emotion. It was just natural. It happened.
What was Sorry, what was going through your mind then when that emotion started to kind of come to fruition? Was there a sense of relief? Was there a sense of embarrassment? Like, were you concerned about other people seeing those tears coming down your face?
Not at all. I knew that it meant something too. I've always appreciated people that that cry through joy, because in my mind it's always been like, wow, you are the maximum of joy right there. If you're crying, like that's it. You couldn't get any happier. But I've never had that feeling myself. And when it was happening, it just made the moment feel even more special, because it was like, yeah, like this deep rooted in my skin, it meant something to me. And when it was happening, it was just, like you said, a sense of relief, really. You've put in countless hours of work, you know, through arguing with your teammates, staying up late to watch film, going in early to shoot, everything that you did that season, and then to get what you wanted at the end of it, it was just, yeah, incredible feeling.
Okay. So is there anything that's matched up to that up until from any point, really? That's the most significant thing that comes to mind in terms of heightened emotions when it's positive emotions. What about negative? Does anything come to mind from a negative standpoint of view?
No, not really. I think with the negative stuff, I'm very like quick to dismiss something. So I can give you an example. Last season, this doesn't happen very often in my life, but there was an altercation between me and another player. And it was more him having an altercation with me, because I wasn't aware that there was an altercation until he tried to grab my throat. So in this moment, usually when I was younger, a lot younger, 16, 17, I would have been, let's go. But it happened. I moved his hand off my neck. People jumped in the way, and that was the end of that little kerfuffle. But I was very quick to just kind of be like, that happened. I'm not interested in you personally. And then literally the next play of that scrimmage that we had in practice, I shot the ball to win the game, and that was it, end of the game. And I remember sitting down after and thinking to myself, you could have reacted with anger and got really upset about it and, you know, fought back or kept talking about it or whatever. But I didn't. I just dismissed it, went straight back to what my focus at hand was, won the game, and that was it. And I just moved on. And I think, I don't know where that comes from, but I feel like that's kind of where I am with sport and in my own life now.
Okay, so that was my next question on that, because I think it's really interesting on when you describe, like, years ago, I'd have reacted in this way, and that would be probably detrimental, but now I'm 29, I reacted in this way, 29, 28, back last season, I reacted in this way, which led to a positive outcome. And the thing is, why did you choose to do that? Are we saying it's just, we don't need to concentrate on emotional intelligence because it's something that naturally happens as we get older because we're more experienced? Or is there a necessity for us to be putting that in the younger players at an earlier age?
Well, I am my own worst critic, but based on conversations that I've had with family members, team members, friends, coaches, a lot of people that I know and trust have said to me, you're very balanced, like the way you deal with things, the way you conduct yourself. You know, I get a lot of compliments in those conversations. So I think if we were going to talk about emotional intelligence, I would assume, based on those conversations, that I've built up some emotional intelligence. And personally, I think that's always been through sport. Over the years, that's definitely where I've got it from.
That's a really good point as well, because that's one of the biggest things that I focused on as a teacher, was actually you're not going to be able to get to that level of performance, that potential, unless you've got control in here. So for me, it's an area that I think we haven't delved into as much as we should do. And I think, you know, would it have affected your rise to your potential if you had delved into it a little earlier yourself? Because at the minute it's coming across as, I know my personal opinion on yourself is that you were probably one of the most balanced people that I worked with when you were at Loughborough. And I was trying to work out back then, was it a natural thing? Was it the input of parents? Was it the input of coaches? Was it the input of your own learning? So here's a question: do you study your minds and that kind of aspect of your personal development in order to improve your basketball?
So yeah, that's a really good question. Because for me specifically, the answer is yes, massively. I don't think actually until you've asked me that question, I've actually realized what I've been doing. Um, so yeah, like my mindset has always been, a lot of coaches that I've worked with will always agree to this, is that it's like I'm always trying to get better. So like I'm always trying to eat a little bit better. I'm always trying to work on everything I can in the hope that it's going to make me play better on the court. And it can be something so far off from basketball that I will convince myself is going to make a difference to my basketball. Whether that's intelligence. So like I have countless books that I've read about power of the mind. Is there one here actually? Oh, so this one, The Happiness Advantage.
Okay.
I've read, I've read in the last year and a half at least, probably 6 books, and they're all about your mind, you know what I mean, your thought process, and just kind of like self-improvement type books. And it's not because that I feel like, oh, you know, there's something wrong with me or I need to improve or whatever. It's just because I'm so desperate to get as much advantage as I can, and improve as much as I can on my mind, because I know that's so important for the game of basketball.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on from that, then. So there's a lot of stuff that you do yourself to gain that advantage, to be the best that
Yeah.
you can be, and that's an understanding
Yeah.
that you've gathered yourself. So when you're thinking about riders, thinking about Australia, thinking about GB, does emotional intelligence, does talking about emotions, reactions, how we prepare our minds during the game even, is that considered as part of that environment, or is it very much like task in hand, right? This is what we tactically do to beat the opponents, rather than the emotional kind of check and challenge?
If it's not the coaches and if it's not the players, somebody's doing it. So my first experience with men's GB was at St. George's Park. And when I got there, one of the first people that I met from the GB staff was a psychologist. So they obviously brought him on board because they saw the importance of the mind. Now, some of the better players actually refused to see the psychologist, because they believed that it was going to knock them off their own routine and their own mindset, and they didn't want to mess with that at that point. I would say that it's definitely important. The coaches will talk about it, maybe not in the depth that you would, someone that's, you know, really interested in that topic, but they'll touch on it in their own way. Whether they know they're doing that or not, I don't know. But, you know, they'll talk about, listen, this is a huge game, but make sure you enjoy it. There's a lot of pressure from the outside world on this team right now. We're carrying GB, blah, 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 blah. But make sure you know what I mean, you're focused on the task at hand. We're not worried about the next game. So that's definitely become part of the rhetoric from coaches nowadays, especially the younger one.
Okay, that's interesting. So what about then going on from there and reading other people's emotions? So obviously I've played in sports teams as well, been kind of a manager, a leader of the department. From your perspective, do you think it's important to be able to read other people's emotions as the game is going on in order to collectively get the job done? So I'm thinking there's a few players that have come to mind that you've played with, that I've seen you play with, where you could be like, right, I got to read this person because this could go one or two ways. We could absolutely implode here, or it could be something that's really going to cheer us on.
You know what it is? I think we do it naturally. I don't know if we do it like tactically. You can feel the change in a team, and a lot of that is actually body language more than outbursts of any type of emotion. It's more less emotion, if anything. You can feel when a team's starting to die because you're absolutely pounding on them. But you can also feel when a team is starting to feel like they've got life. So, there's been numerous occasions where we've got to halftime and we're up 20 points. And the coach has said, listen, don't let these guys think they've got a chance at bringing this back. I think something we talk about a lot in basketball is momentum. So once you start scoring a little bit, you're down 20, you string a couple stops in a row on defense and get a couple scores on offense. All of a sudden, everybody's energy changes. So now all of a sudden, they're getting up on the bench, they're clapping, they're getting hyped, and you can see those emotions. That's the last thing you want to see when you're up 20.
Yeah. So what about those? So you've just mentioned there, some of the biggest things that we struggle with, I think, in terms of human performance is when we're up against it. Now, coming from a team, a professional level where you were winning a lot again and again and again, so that pressure surely would build up. So when you are perhaps behind and the pressure's on, or we might be kind of, other teams might be trying to catch us out here. Do you have any thoughts about that emotional connection to that pressure and how you deal with that?
For me personally, I really like being the underdog. I don't really like being the favorite. It's not. It just. I don't know. I don't know where that comes from, to be honest. But I've never really liked being the favorite. I always want to be the team that people count out. Like, they're not going to do that well, or they're not going to win. Like, I prefer being that team.
Is that because you're not used to that, are you?
What's that?
I'm checking.
Being the underdog. I feel like I'm always the underdog. Constantly.
Do you think? Okay, that's a really interesting point, because it's almost like you're putting yourself in the frame of mind where you've got something to prove, the underdog kind of mentality.
Yeah, definitely. I just never feel as if like. So sometimes I get messages from kids or younger players, and they say, "Oh, you're such a great player," or whatever else, and you got any tips? And it's funny that like they really truly believe that, like that's how they see me, but like I never see myself the same way. So I'll give them advice, I'll give them whatever it is they need to hear, but I don't see myself in the same light that they do. I just never have. And I feel like whenever I've like played with thinking that I'm good, played with, actually, you know what, I'm pretty decent at this, things start going wrong. And like, I'll have 5 or 6 bad games in a row, or, whatever. I just know that when I think that way, I don't perform the same.
Yeah. Okay. So that was coming to my next question, because we've spoken about it a little bit, but bounce back is definitely one of the things that a lot of people struggle with, and we're delving into how do we bounce back when, like you've said, when we've had 6 games in a row where we've not really performed that well. No. How do you personally change that perspective of yourself? Is it something that you naturally get over, or is it something that you consciously work on in order to maintain your position in the team?
Oh, well, first answer is definitely continue to work on. For my own mental strength, for the impression that I leave on everyone around me, and to keep my level doing this, because anytime it stops, it allows everyone else to catch up. So I'm constantly trying to keep myself at the level that I'm at. But in terms of bouncing back, in my opinion, in my mindset, when I've fell off, or I'm in a rough patch, it's more I need to change. I'm doing something differently. So I'll be looking at what I'm doing, like, what am I doing differently? You know, I'll go back to my shot and I'll try and break it down to its simple form, like all the foundations of my shot form and how I'm following through, how my wrist is. So I try to look at everything that I'm doing rather than just going, oh, I'm just going to work harder, or, you know what I mean?
Mm. Okay. So I'm just going to take it back for a second now, because I'm just going to pick up on from what you were saying there and what you said earlier on about the fact that you don't really get anxious before games and you don't really get emotional before games. Has that always been the case, or is that something that you've learned yourself as you've got older?
No, I probably miscommunicated that wrong. So I communicated that wrong. It's not that I don't get anxious. I do. So it would be like butterflies a little bit, or a lot of adrenaline will be going through me. I get that. Sometimes, you know, I lose my appetite until right up until the game, which is kind of annoying. But I get those feelings, but the emotion side of it is pretty flat. There's no emotion in a sense of like anger, or if there is an emotion before a game for me, it's giddiness. It's almost
Okay.
like, you know, like Christmas morning,
Yeah.
kind of giddy, like, oh, something's coming. Like, it's like that kind of excitement more than anything. Thoughts, hundreds of thoughts, like thousands of thoughts go through your
Yeah.
head, but they never turn into an emotion for me before a game.
Okay. So there's no difference, because you've played at the O2, which is probably the biggest basketball arena that we've got in the UK.
Yeah.
You've played GB. So is there a difference in your approach to those games as there are to a regular season game with less varieties?
Actually, yeah, there is. No, there is. I think when it's on the big stage, I hear my voice in my head more. Like, have you drank enough? Right, don't let the lights bother you, or, you know, stay cool. You know, like, you see the other team at the other side of the arena, it's like, okay, you know, don't show any kind of nerves or anything like that. And, you know, you're worried about if your parents have got in the arena or not. And, you know, there's a lot that goes on. But fortunately for me, the bigger the moment, the better I play. It's always been that way.
Yeah.
It seems like when it's a final, I'm able to bring everything that I've got for it. So I don't know if I'm just saving it in the tank until the end of the season, but for some reason, when it's on a big stage, I seem more focused, more relaxed. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay, Barry Big Time.
Yeah, Barry Big
Time. All right, so that's interesting. There's just a couple more things that I want to really delve into with this bit.
Yeah.
And it's moments where, because what I'm trying to do is relate the stuff that we learn through elite sport into normal life and kind of almost the corporate world as well.
Okay.
So can you think of situations that you've been in when you're playing and your other teammates aren't pulling their finger out? They're not doing what they're meant to be doing. What goes through your mind in that, and how do you react to that? Because what might go on in your mind might be different to how you then portray it.
I think it's changed over the years. I think
Okay.
the older I've got, the less probably annoyed that I've got, because when I was younger, I just assumed that everybody was trying to do the same thing. So I assumed that everyone on my team was trying to do whatever's best by the team. And that was probably the case. My younger teams, we were all just like robots. You know, the coach said jump and we all said how high. So that was my foundation of basketball. And I, for whatever reason, assumed that the world of basketball was like that. It wasn't until I got to the professional level, I left Nottingham for the first time, that actually I realized it's different everywhere you go. But now, at my age now, my teammates, in my opinion, weren't pulling their weight in something or weren't doing something, I'd be quicker to point the finger at myself and say, well, what could I have done better? What could I have done to help that situation? I'll communicate if I think that person would usually want to do that or would want to do that anyway. But there's a lot of people that I know I'm wasting my breath, or I'm just going to get them riled up or annoyed, which is not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So I think I've just learned to understand who I'm playing with as quick as possible, so that in those situations I know how to react, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the major things to get through, whether you're in a corporate world or even in a social situation with your friends. Like, you know how to react to the situation if you know the people, get to know the people. And I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, it's one of the most important things in creating a championship winning side is to know each other. Do you spend time getting to know each other? I mean, it's a silly question from my point of view, saying it out loud, but other people may not know whether that's important in creating a championship winning performance level all the time.
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways to build a culture to get the same result. So with the younger age groups, I know that like certain coaches try to build the culture and like they want everyone to be best friends. But obviously in the men's age group, some people don't see it as like teamy, culture. Like they just see it as, this is my job. I turn up at whatever time, I train, I work hard, I leave. Don't talk to me unless I'm here at training. Like I've got my own family and my own life, like away from basketball. And some people, it's everything for them. Like, they want to meet up with you after training. They hang around in the changing room for ages. Like, why are you still here type thing? Because for them, that's their environment. That's their friends. That's their friendship groups. And I honestly, I find it amazing how my coach, Rob, does it. I can't get my head around how he finds good people that he's never met, never been in the same room as them, but he finds them all over the world and brings them all to the same place. And I don't know if it's sport, I don't know if it's the personalities, but something every year that I've been at the Riders has brought everybody together. Like, we all just, at some point, whether it's early on or late on, we're just like all on the same page. And yeah, you have different personalities, but everybody's kind of going in the same direction. And for me, that's the biggest thing. And it's so hard to beat a team when they're all just moving in one direction.
But have you ever been in teams where there is a rotten egg? And what influence does that have on that culture and that kind of mindset and emotions? And
so, like I said, I see myself as balanced. I don't think that anyone would ever say Jamell's bringing the group down or, like whatever. I don't think anyone would ever say that about me, because I'm always self-aware of how I'm affecting other people or how I'm being. And sometimes you come across people who, in my opinion, aren't aware. It's like they're like this. They see what they want and they just focus on that. And any kind of effects that they have on people around that aren't in this little focus, they don't care. If they're arguing with people, if they come in a bad mood, they don't think, oh, actually, me walking around sulking right now is going to attract attention from other people and suck the life out of other people. They don't see that. So if you're the type of person where that would bother you, then it's tough. It's tough to be around someone like that. It is, especially if they're one of the main players. If it's someone that doesn't really play and, you don't really need them in any way, shape or form to win, then it's easier to just kind of like discard their emotions and just leave them to be. But if it's someone that you're constantly talking to, passing the ball to, getting the ball from, everything, then it's tough. It's tough to have that emotion around.
Makes life a bit awkward, doesn't it?
Man.
So there's an interesting thing. Have you ever had issues off the court that have then infiltrated onto the court because of the effect? Or is it a case of when you're a high performer, you can actually switch on, switch off? So this may happen, off the court, outside of training, maybe outside of the basketball kind of world, or you turn up to the game and somebody has had a bit of a moment, but when the whistle goes, then it's time to switch on. When you get to your level of performance, is it a case of being able to switch on and switch off? That's one of the key things I want to get to.
Well, for me, it is. That's how I see it. I don't know if that's how every single player is going to see it. But that's just my personality. I'm almost 100% certain that I've played with, know of, and seen players that, for example, if we got into an argument before the game, I could, completely didn't sort it out. We're not friends right now. And we got in the game and I was in a position where they could give me the ball and I would score easily, or they would take the ball and make a tough shot. They're going to take that option. And they can argue that it wasn't based on what happened before the game. But in my opinion, I would say it was. It hasn't happened to me personally. Maybe it has, but I've been unaware of it. But I think in basketball specifically, in good ways and bad ways, people drag their life or their off-court experiences onto the floor with them.
Yeah, onto the performance environment, I suppose, because this is very similar to people bringing their home life into work and their work life into home and things like that. But at a high performance level, what I'm trying to do is use the things that we've learned from high elite sport to be able to break it down and then say, right, this is what we do. This is what happens at the elite sport level, where it is so vital to switch on, switch off, or not let those things affect what's going on. Right. Couple more things. This is one question that I really do want to know, because I was watching a video the other day from the tennis world. And I can't remember if it was a coach. I can't remember who it was now. I should do. So my apologies to that guy, whoever he is, if he sees this. But he was talking about the fact that the tennis fans now are saying that the game has become boring because the players aren't emotional anymore. So you think back to the old John McEnroe type folks and Andre Agassi and other people that explode and create a bit of an emotional kind of display. So my thinking was, knowing that I was going to speak to you, is that something that goes through your head when you're on the court? So is the entertainment factor something that is considered when you're part of an organization, part of a franchise? Or is it like the fans, I want to please the fans, but creating a entertainment value doesn't really come into it? It was something that I really wanted to get your opinion on. Or is it a question that you're not going to answer in case coaches are hearing?
No.
I'm joking.
I'm letting it all out on this interview. I would personally say that I don't ever think it's gone through my mind to do something that's going to entertain the fans necessarily. Because I know that whether I dunk the ball or whether I lay it up, it's still 2 points. Now, I can dunk, and I know that the fans would like that. I know that my teammates would like that. I know that the other team would hate that. So if there's an opportunity for me to dunk the ball, then you could argue that all those things are leading to me dunking the ball, which part of that is the fans, right? But I don't consciously think that. I'm not like, oh, they're going to love this. Here we go. And to be honest with you, the reason that I don't do that is because when I was younger and I first started to learn to dunk, that would go through my head. I'd be like, oh, this is going to be crazy. And then I would mess up. So I don't think like that anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, no, but it is something that's hugely important, the entertainment part of it, especially in this country, because basketball isn't part of our culture to the point where the average Joe will come to a game and enjoy basketball for what it is. I think in this country, the majority of people would be looking for, you know, the cheerleaders, the music, everything that comes with the package rather than just football. And we're not at that level yet where people just enjoy basketball as a beautiful sport for what it is. So yeah, I think it's for the GMs and maybe even the coaches, to be honest. I think they definitely consider it. For myself, the only time it comes into my mind is a dead ball. So that's like, we scored a 3, you know, it's a dagger, you know, the other team can't come back now. They call timeout. So now their team's going to their bench. On my way to my bench, I might go like this, you know, to the fans a little bit. Because we know we've won. It's over. And I want you guys to know that we appreciate you. But outside of the actual game itself, yeah, definitely. After the game, taking photos, social media, oh, definitely. We're always trying to entertain the fans and other teams and our teammates. But in the game, not so much.
Not so much in the game. But it was interesting to hear, as you were describing that it's something that's possibly become something that you have learned is not important. Like you were saying, like when you were younger, that might have been the case, but as you've grown older, there's that. Again, it just points out that maturity, that emotional understanding. I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to be the popular one in terms of my dunks, you know, like I used to be. You know, I was dunking all the time.
All the time.
Okay, right. Just the last couple of things, Jamell. Because now I want to move you outside of the basketball world, because I know and I can see what I'm getting from this is how you are a balanced person, and you come across as a very well balanced person. And actually, the last question I want on that is, how much of an influence were family in order for you to be that kind of balanced person? Or what would you say has been the biggest influence? Sorry, that's a better question. What's been the biggest influence do you feel has been on your kind of balanced persona?
Okay, so there's one memory and then there's my mom. So one memory that I have that for some reason, it had such a major part in my development. I don't know why, but I remember it like it was yesterday, right? So I'm with my dad. I went to go visit my dad. My parents went together. So I went to Amsterdam to visit my dad. And we were leaving his workshop. And he was just driving out slowly. And he turned to me and he's like, "What are you thinking about?" And I was like, you know, like when you kind of wake out of a daydream. And I was like, I told him some imaginary story that I was thinking about. And he was like, "That's amazing." He was like, "Don't ever lose that." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, it's an amazing thing that you think a lot. Like you're very young, but you're always thinking, you're always considering things, and I can see it. So my dad was my idol. So that was like a huge compliment from him. And I've just never forgotten it. And I've always kind of cherished it a little bit.
Okay.
So ever since that day, I've kind of been aware of myself thinking and been, you know, like kind of almost pushing myself to do it. And I think that's really helped in terms of being balanced, basically. And then on the other side of it, I grew up with my mom. I spent the majority of my childhood living with my mom. She was just one level. I didn't hear my mom swear until I was about maybe 14, 15. Like a swear word. It was like, whoa, you just swore. Now, you know, I'm not stupid. I know that now at my age, she was just balanced in front of me. She was in control of her emotions in front of me to keep me, you know, happy and feel like everything's okay. And what I took from that is that you can control that. So even when things are going terrible, she was able to act like there was nothing wrong. I never knew of any hardship that we had. She always found ways to turn terrible things into positive things. So yeah, I just think that the mixture of that memory and, don't get me wrong, there's hundreds of other things I could point to.
Yeah.
Those two things seem to really be the pillars of why I am the way I am.
Okay, that's really good. That's the kind of stuff that I was looking for there. But just on the other side of that, because I've been reading and experiencing and observing that there is a skill to be able to manage and regulate your emotions. And a lot of the time it's actually managing negative emotions.
Yeah.
Have you seen any evidence of that then having a detrimental effect on portraying your positive emotions?
Have I seen?
Yeah, so when it might be pushing it with your mum, but you might be using it with other people. But those people that are calm, so maybe yourself. I don't think this is true of you either. But when a person is good at controlling their negative emotions, so I'm talking about anxiety, fear, anger, sadness, etc. When we're good at regulating them, is there a correlation then? Are you dumbing all emotions, therefore you're not being able to portray your positive emotions, or can you regulate differently between positive and negative emotions? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So before I answer it completely, one thing I will say is probably the last 3-4 years, I've come to realize that the best players that I've played against and with have all been through like some crazy stuff in their life. I think what I learned from that was that all the negative things that you go through, or the terrible things that maybe some people go through, can actually lead them down a path of success. And as crazy as this sounds, I'm almost jealous that I don't have that harness of power to put into my own career. And that's, again, me looking at myself and saying, oh, what could I do to get better? What could what did I miss? What haven't I done? And I think, like, I work as hard as this guy, but he just seems to have this little edge on me, this knack. There's something about him, this grittiness. I was brought, like I said, in my mum's house. I didn't have any, I wasn't beaten as a child. All the horrible things that you hear about people going through, some of these amazing athletes going through. Fortunately for me, I didn't go through that. And when you talk about regulating, I actually think it's more about filtering. So, like, how are you filtering those experiences? So personally, actually, since we're on the topic, I know that, for example, if we're playing a basketball game, 1-on-1, 5-on-5, championship game, whatever, pickup, if you was to purposely hurt me, so say like you purposely elbow me in the throat, or accidentally, but don't apologize, there's a small part of me that I have no control over. I can't just touch on it. It just only happens when someone who intentionally tries to hurt me or someone on my team, that comes out of me, and I just see red, and it's like I go to another level, like basketball wise. Like the hoop seems bigger, like I feel stronger, like everything. It's like a boost. So I always think, okay, well, imagine that, but you've been through something like real bad as a child, and now you're taking that power, all that energy of anger, oppression or whatever it is, and you're putting it into basketball. Of course you're going to be amazing. Of course you're going to get to the top level. Whether they know they're doing it, I don't know. I actually personally think a lot of them don't. That's what's going on. But that's my opinion to how they got to where they got to.
So you're saying that some of them have... So the power of channeling that energy, that negative energy, into something positive is what gives a lot of like the best players, an edge, sometimes depending on what they've been through.
Sure. and finding that as well, because at the same time, there's people that, man, if you read some of the stories of NBA players, it's ridiculous. Like, you're talking about people that were homeless months, almost weeks leading up to signing $1 million contract. So you're talking about having nothing and knowing that you've got nothing, and then all of a sudden you're in that top percentile of rich people in the world. So, like I said, I don't know if they know that what they're going through is fueling their amazing ability to play the game of basketball, but that I think there's something with that desperation, which obviously comes with a lot of emotions, crying, upset, you know, whatever it is, that leads them to be so good at basketball.
That's a very interesting point. I think I might have to come back and ask you a few more questions around that one, Jamell, because I think we're opening there. The stuff that I really want to get to is what gives us that greater edge, because I do think that it's psychological and it's a performance level. You know, at the end of the day, you look at the players that play within the BBL league and their you know, their ability to dunk or lay up or run or shoot the ball. You know, we get higher shooters or better shooters. But a lot of it, you know, is in here, and that's what I'm trying to get people to. That's what I'm trying to unravel, and a lot of it's down to kind of emotions and things like that. Okay, right. This definitely is the last one, because the other night. So at the minute, we obviously have a lot of pent up emotions around the Black Lives Matter scenario that we've got going on in the world, and I know that you were on the BBC recently doing an interview with those guys too. So I know that you've already spoken about it, but I also watched the Netflix documentary. Have you seen 13th?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that stirred up a hell of a lot of emotion in me, and a lot of thinking as well. So my thinking went into overdrive after that. But my major thing for you is I'm going to take the opportunity to talk about the fact that you are so balanced when it comes to the basketball stuff, and you've been doing that for years. As also, you've also been a black man for years as well. Is there a difference? You know, that is two very emotional situations. Are you still as balanced when it comes to things like Black Lives Matter, racial oppression, you know, things that maybe you've gone through in your life? Are you a different person when that starts getting triggered, or are you still remain balanced?
100%. It's funny, I had this conversation last night with one of my teammates, and going back to me saying earlier that I used to fight, when I was younger, I would fight you. If you tried to fight me, I'd go straight into it. That was based on literally every fight that I can remember. I don't remember a fight that wasn't about racism. That was always why I was fighting with someone. So growing up, it'd be someone calling me the N-word, or, you know, some sort of racial slur that would then make me fight them. And as I got older, I really got into a fight with someone at school where when I went home and I was thinking about it, I felt bad. I couldn't figure out why I felt bad for this guy. I was like, he called me the N-word. I dealt with him. And then I went home and I felt bad about it. I was like, oh my God, I feel terrible. And it stuck with me for a long time. And me and that guy actually became really good friends by the time school was finished. But it was the first time that I felt bad for anyone that was racist, and I couldn't understand why. And eventually I got to the point where I realized, like, he's said something racist, but that then doesn't give me the okay to physically harm him. And then the question then was, well, when is it okay to, you know, physically impose myself on someone? And it's like, well, it's not. If someone's physically trying to hurt me, I still don't actually have to hurt them to stop them from hurting me. So I just got to a point where I was like, there's no need for me to ever physically touch someone, like cause harm on someone, because I can stop them without having to do that. And that probably comes from my dad's karate background as well, like understanding how he thinks a little bit. But yeah, I just, like, if I was walking down the street today and someone was like, hey, you know, some sort of racist word, it wouldn't incite anything in me, because my mindset is just that you've said a word. I'm the same person I was before you said it. I'm the same person after. I'm not hurt physically or mentally. Cool. Like, have a nice day. Like, I will just meet it with kindness. Because, and sorry, one more thing as well, physically. There was a fight in Nottingham. This would have been, wow. This would have been like 12 years ago now. And somebody was punched in a fight. It was over racism, and he punched him. The guy fell and cracked his head on a curb, and he didn't survive. He died. So that scared me, because I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like, what if someone came at me racially, we got into a fight, and that happened? Yeah. Scared the life out of me. Like, I could kill someone. Like, you know, like, no way. And those sorts of things matured my mindset in terms of how I react to racism. So for me, the fact that I'm not going to physically harm you, why would I bother getting into an argument with you? I'm not going to waste my time trying to educate you, because I don't know you, and you probably don't want to be educated by me. So it's just like, it doesn't knock me off my course at all.
Okay, so you're consciously choosing then for that not to influence your world, like whatever is going on in their world, their reality, their perspective of skin color and that kind of thing. You're consciously saying that's not coming into my world. I would say it's a choice, an active choice that you've learned to kind of like, this is my stand on dealing with those situations. I don't need it in my world. How much of a difference would that make if a lot of people chose to take that kind of perception on those situations?
I don't know. Again, this is where I'm self-critical. I haven't been to a march, for example.
Yeah.
There's two sides of me with that. So the one side of me is like, man, you know, like, you should be going to the march. You're black. You got to stand up for your community. You've been through racism. You've seen it. It upsets you, as it should, and should upset everyone when they see horrible things like that. You should be at the march. But then the other side of me is like, I shouldn't be going to the march because I think other people should expect me to be at the march. I should only be going to the march if I physically, naturally, off my own conscience, want to be at the march and protesting. And I just feel like it's a beautiful thing when people make an action, whether it be protesting or whatever it is, and the reaction is positive. So, you know, the new laws that have been passed in America, now police can't just knock on the door and enter. I can't remember the specifics of it, but it's a reaction to a death of a lady where they went into a house, you know, without a warrant and killed her, and it was the wrong person. So I like the fact that all this noise that's come from the protests and riots and everything else, all this attention that's come from it, has somehow now turned into these positive actions in the government level, in the law. That's great. But for me personally, I have to be conscious of what I'm doing. And I can't do that just because I see people doing it who are the same skin color as me, who share the same emotions that I might feel about racism.
So because an interesting thing that I've been kind of clued onto was a quote by, I think it was Desmond Tutu, who said, if you don't stand, if you remain on the fence in regards to the oppressor, then you're choosing the side of the oppressor, or something along those lines. I can't remember it exactly. That's a bad thing. So it's basically saying if you don't choose one way or the other, then you're choosing the side of the oppressor. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm really interested in your opinion on that situation, because you're choosing, right, I've got to be careful what I do here, because my actions, you're choosing not to get involved in the protests for your personal beliefs and for reasons where you're like, I've got to be careful what I do. Is that from a public point of view, from a public figure point of view?
No, not at all. I think the point that I'm trying to make here is I'm not trying to be right. I'm not trying to say like, oh, I'm not protesting because the right thing to do is not protest unless I want, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that it has to come from me, otherwise it's not real. And I know for 100%, if I go to that protest tomorrow, for example, if there was a protest and I went to it because I felt like I should be there, because in a public way, I feel like people are going to maybe, have a problem with me if I don't go, then I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. And I don't think that doesn't line up with my morals. So it's not about what other people think. It's not about what's right or wrong. It's my own morals. I wouldn't do it unless I want to do it, unless it comes from me. I don't want to get into right and wrong, but there is a part of me that thinks that, God, I don't know if I should get into that. It's an opinion. Okay, here's my opinion. That some of these people that are protesting, are they in line with their own morals? So that's not what I'm trying to say. Are they doing it for the right reason is what I'm trying to say. Obviously, whatever protest it is, for whatever group it is, there's always people that are in the protest because they can hide within the protest to do what they want to do, whatever that is, cause fights, whatever it is. Some people, maybe it's for their social media. Maybe they're doing it because they want to get a really cool photo on their social media of them at the protest. Maybe they're doing it because they don't want other people to not see them doing it. Do you see what I'm saying? So I don't have an issue with anyone in those protests. That's not my point at all. I am very go for it. I'm behind you the whole way. If that's what you choose to do, that's great, because the end result of you being there could be really positive. Just for me personally, I need my own heart to push me into that protest rather than join a protest. You've probably got a better chance of me protesting by myself, randomly in the middle of August. No one else even knows that I'm doing it, and I'm stood outside Parliament with a microphone screaming something that I want to protest about, or something it's really, you know what I mean? I want to talk about Black Lives Matter today. You know what I mean? That's more what you're going to get from me, rather than, oh, everyone's protesting tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to be there. Again, it's not a negative thing. It's just how my mind works.
No, I think it's a really good point, because I was writing an article today actually on that's another edit, mate. It's getting late in the day.
No, you're doing great.
Right, what was I writing that on today? Because I want to sum this up, because it's on balance. So one thing that I'm going to be bringing out later on, I've been researching and studying all this stuff that all these other bigwigs are doing. And I do believe that everything is underpinned by one universal law, which is balance. The whole world is based on balance. The reason why we're here is because of balance. We're not too far away from the sun, and we're not too close to the sun, and that allowed life to flourish. And life is only, everything stems from balance. And what I'm trying to get at, and I think this is really good from my point of view, is that we can only be balanced as human beings. So once we get the understanding that the universe will balance things out, whether it does it quickly or whether it does it in time, things will get balanced out. And it will find a balance. It will find a balance. But those that are really good and high performing are those that understand balance, but also the crucial bit is that they know their values and morals and beliefs. and that is coming really clear from me today, from this interview with you, is that whether you know it or not, you're actually very certain and on your, these are my values, these are my beliefs, this is who I am, and that will drive my actions, that will drive how I react, that will drive how I respond, that will drive how I behave, how I show up, how I don't show up, maybe driven from your morals. So that's the bit that I'm trying to get to, is relief, you know, getting this information out there. Like, to be a high performer, I think you do have to be a consistent high performer in all areas of your life. You've got to be very connected to your morals, your values, and your beliefs.
My image of what you just said in my mind is that regardless of what's going on, so regardless of how I'm playing, regardless of my stats, regardless of my relationships with my teammates, my coaches, my family, my financial situation, there's an undertone in me that's just always trying to stay level. So I think you're right. Like, wherever the balance is, you kind of want to just be here, regardless of what's going on around you. And I think that some people allow the balance that shifts to affect them and how they do things and how they act. Definitely would agree.
It's who we blame and how long we stick onto that blame when we get unbalanced. And I was saying, a lot of the time, the thing that unbalances us is something that's out of our control. It's even worse when we unbalance on purpose, when we do something to unbalance ourselves. I won't go into that. But yeah, that kind of balance, things will knock us unbalanced. Yeah. And we have to immediately understand, right, I'm unbalanced. Where has it come from? What's knocked me out of balance? Therefore, knowing that, I can then work out then how to get the balance back and work on that aspect. So to remain balanced doesn't mean that you're never, you know, you're emotionally inept. That's not what it's saying. It's saying I got to understand my emotions, got to understand my values, my beliefs. When I get unbalanced, I then need to know, right, I'm unbalanced. I work out where it's come from, and then I can work out, because it's probably not in exactly the same place that the imbalance came from. You'll have to revisit something else to get the balance back. Might be something completely different, might be something slightly different. But the best thing is what you were saying about when we went on to the Black Lives Matter and all the stuff that we've talked about, the basketball is very, very clear. Like, I am a person that is in touch with my values, in touch with my morals. I know my beliefs. I know that I'm a better person as well as a better performer when I'm balanced. And that will be, for me, the key information that we're trying to get out there. But it doesn't happen. So now we've had this discussion. Last question is, do you think that we do need to talk about emotional intelligence more in the development of human beings?
Definitely. Just to be aware of it, if anything. You know, some people aren't fortunate to have that experience in life or throughout their life that leads them on a path of being balanced and understanding their emotions and being aware of their emotions. Some people don't even know that they're angry when they're hungry. They don't know. Like, they literally just don't know. And they're like 30 odd. And it's like, how have you not figured out that you get angry when you've not eaten? Like, you know, like, to me, that's like, dude, that's so simple. But to some people, if you never had that conversation, why would you know? So yeah, I think for guys that want to make it to the top level, and just in general life, like, if you can have control of that, not even control, I'm not even going to go as far as being able to control it, just aware of it. I think it could do amazing things for people.
Yeah. You see, what Robin Sharma, I will mention him. He's somebody that I have a lot of respect for, and it was one of the things that changed my life when he was saying the three pillars to development are greater awareness, lead to greater decisions, lead to greater outcomes. And it's as simple as that. You don't have to mess with it. If you want to be better, increase your awareness, increase your knowledge, increase your understanding of the situation, whether it be a specific thing or generically. Increase awareness. Love it. Right, Jamell, I'm going to stop the recording, but I won't stop this for a second, but I really, really appreciate your time here, and obviously we'll do what we can to increase the human performance. Better humans, better world.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks very much.